Thank you very much, Peter. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nicole Livingston and I'm your facilitator for this interview series with our Olympic athletes and also our Director of Media for the Australian Olympic Committee, Mike Tancred. It's my pleasure to introduce the athletes. Before I do that, quite obviously today it's a fairly, sorry to use a Bruce McAvaneyism, it's a very special day. It's 30 days to go until the Olympic Games start in London 2012. The 27th of July, it all kicks off. 16 days of glory. Of course, the soccer program does start before the official opening ceremony. 10,500 of the world's best athletes all vying for the same thing, and that is to fulfil their dreams and goals that they've probably been dreaming and living since they were little boys and little girls. 302 gold medals will be awarded at the London Olympic Games, so quite obviously those dreams that 10,500 athletes have all don't get fulfilled, but certainly they'll be in there trying their best, and that really is what the Olympic Games is all about. We have three wonderful guests today to talk about the Olympic Games from their perspective. I'd like to introduce each of them to you. The first one to come up on stage is Matt Shirvington. Please make your way up, Matt, as I get to brag about you. Matt Shirvington is an Olympian, five-time 100-metre Australian track champion, and he's gone on to also establish a very successful television career with Foxtel. Matt had many memorable moments in his career on the track, including smashing the 100-metre Australian record with a sensational run. Who can forget that run at the 1998 Commonwealth Games in Kuala Lumpur, where he was only 19 years of age. And at the Sydney 2000 Olympic Games, when he was 21 years of age, Matt's performance ranked him in the world's top 10 for the 100 metres, which is just sensational. Of course, his next challenge is working over at the Olympic Games for London 2012 for Foxtel. So, Matt, can you tell us what your role will be? I know you'll be there, and quite obviously it'll be track and field, but what else will you be doing while you're there?
Thank you, Nicole, for the introduction, and thanks for inviting me down here. It's great to get amongst everybody here in the press and pump up the games, because it is going to be a big games. Hopefully not the best games ever, but we'll wait and see. Yeah, my role is with Foxtel. We've got 8 24-hour channels throughout the games. We show every gold medal will be live from start to finish, every event. Which is phenomenal for Australian television, and the first time in Australia that we'll see every single gold medal won live, and be able to catch up with the Australian athletes from start to finish their competition, not just being able to catch up with them at the end if they succeed or not. So we'll be able to glorify the athletes, and Nicole, you understand that everybody that goes to an Olympic Games trains as hard as anybody else there, whether they win or lose. So it's great to be able to celebrate every athlete.
Well done. I think you may have done that one or two times before.
A couple of times,
in terms
yes.
of talking about Foxtel's coverage. Thank you, Matt. Our next guest up onto the stage is the Director of Media and Communications for the Australian Olympic Committee. His name is Mike Tancred. Mike, welcome to you. Mike's been in this role since 1999. During that time, he's worked on the 2000 Olympics in Sydney, Athens 2004, Beijing 2008, the Salt Lake Winter Games in 2002, Turin Winter Games in 2006, and Vancouver in 2010. So London will be his 7th Olympic Games for the Australian Olympic Committee. To give you an idea of where Mike's come from prior to this role at the Australian Olympic Committee, he worked in many different roles in media, starting in radio and then moving on to television. He's been a reporter, a host, and he's worked as a network news editor for Channel 10 as well. Mike was one of a group of Australians who established Sky News London for Rupert Murdoch in 1988, and he's covered major sporting events including Wimbledon, the British Open Golf, Test Cricket, the FA Cup, but he's adamant that nothing compares to the Olympic Games. Mike, you have a title with the AOC, but can you briefly tell us what your job is, apart from managing probably a bit of trouble that comes to your door at all hours of the Olympic Games, but what is your job in London?
Thank you, Nicole. Thank you very much for having me. My old boss, Neil Miller, is here today. He's a great man, Neil, very quietly spoken, would have made a great coach. He spoke quietly, but I would have run through a brick wall for Neil when I was at Channel 10. My job is to strike a balance at the Olympic Games to allow the media to get adequate access to the athletes so they can do their job, and to make sure at the same time that the athletes get to focus 100% on the job they have to do at the Olympics, and that is to try and win. So I've achieved my goal. I have a mini Olympics, I guess, with inside an Olympics. If an athlete comes home and says, I didn't do my best, I was distracted by the media, then I guess the media director has failed. And if Tony Hetherington comes home and says, my journalist didn't get enough access to the athletes, then I've failed Tony and the other media that go to the game. So I walk a tightrope, Nicole. Thank you.
Our third and final panellist today, as Peter said earlier, needs no introduction, but I will read out her credentials, and that is Jana Pittman. Jana, welcome to you. Jana is you can give her a round of applause. She's a two-time senior world champion on the track over the 400 hurdles and has won an impressive 4 gold medals at the Commonwealth Games, competed at 2 Olympic Games in Sydney and Athens, but is probably best remembered for that remarkable comeback race into the final of the 400 hurdles in Athens and the surrounding drama of getting Jana to be fit to be able to actually have that battle in Athens. So, Jana, will you be in London? Will you be working on London in any way, shape or form?
No, after I think what you just said there, I've hogged the media a bit too much in the last few years. So, no, I was going to commentate and I was really looking forward to it. But as Matt will be testament to, during the Beijing Olympics, I unfortunately didn't go to that Olympics due to injury as well. We did commentary together, and off the screen, he was my lovingly hug because I was crying through the games, while on the screen I'm like, hi everyone, this is amazing. So I think this year I'm going to take a few weeks off with my son and go travelling. So I'll watch it like a lot of other people here, but you guys will have all the hard work to do.
Okay. Enjoy that holiday.
I
think you will still be finding a television to watch the Olympic Games.
Twitter.
So questions to all of you. Matt alluded to it. Will this be the best Games ever? Will it be better than Sydney?
Yeah, look, I think Sebastian Coe's hasn't been shy in saying that he wants them to be. He's modelled much of these Olympic Games on the Sydney Games and utilised what Sydney did so well. The Olympic Park precinct is very similar to Homebush. He's got Australians working in and around venues, whether it's in construction, management, from the start right through to the delivery of the Games. And I think if it is the best Games ever, he would have to take his hat off to the Sydney Games for setting the standard.
Mike, you, like Matt, have been there quite often. You've seen the facilities. It certainly has the ability to be the best Games.
It's shaping up that way, Nicole. I think they have some challenges with security and transport, so I wouldn't be saying they're the best Games ever just yet. Let's just wait and see. And I think Boris, the mayor, has probably hit the nail on the head. They're a little bit stiff, and the volunteers will need to really lift to be anything like the volunteers in Sydney. They were absolutely one of the highlights for me as someone at the Sydney 2000 Games. I think the volunteers were a credit to Australia, and I think the volunteers in London will have a big job to match them.
Jana, do you get the feeling that these could be quite competitive with Sydney's atmosphere and the successful result of Sydney?
That's a good question, but for me actually it comes from a different perspective because I come from the athlete side of it and being still heavily involved in sport. Obviously I haven't retired just yet. I've been witness to what the British have actually done with regards to their funding going into sport. So an Olympic Games for me is obviously won by medals, and I think for Sydney one of the most amazing experiences was watching Cathy Freeman win in front of her home crowd, and I know that the UK athletics team have actually they've poured in about 10 times the amount of funding that we've had in our Australian athletics team. So they're very keen to obviously bring a lot of medals home, and I think that also will create an incredible atmosphere in London, knowing that their heroes are on the track and in the pool winning medals for their country.
Well, let's get into the hard questions, because I know from an athletic point of view, athletes and coaches don't like to crystal ball, but let's talk about who the stars are going to be post-London. We've seen who have been heavily promoted by Nine and Fox leading into the Games. Who do you think will be the stars?
Oh, without doubt. I mean, he was on the front page of the telly today, I think. James Magnussen will walk away from these Games as probably the biggest global face, not unlike Ian Thorpe did in 2000. I think he's going to put himself in the mix with, Michael Phelps, Ryan Lochte, in terms of swimming. He's chosen two of the hardest events, the 100 and 50 free, which I think will only credit him when he walks away from these Games if he is successful. Sally Pearson, of course, has been highly publicised as one of the faces, and rightfully so. She is just on fire at the moment, and the reason she is so consistent, and she hasn't lost a race since the she's lost one race since the World Championships last year, where she clipped a hurdle. But her technique has allowed her to have an off day and still win, quite significantly, and I think she'll do the same. The only thing that's going to prevent the Australians from doing well, really, is their confidence in themselves and their ability to do the job. We don't have, as Jana was saying, we don't have the funding that we had going into the Sydney Games. We don't have the support network that we had going into the Sydney Games, but we've also had the ability to create areas of Olympic sport that we haven't tapped into before. I'd love to see the BMX do well. The sailors are doing extremely well, winning 3 World Championship titles not long ago. I mean, Matthew Belcher and Malcolm Page will go into these games having won 3 consecutive World Championships and the gold medal in Beijing. There's loads of areas that we can do well. The equestrian team, the rowers. I mean, the men's 4 is going to be a cracking, epic battle between Great Britain and Australia, and to see the new, fresh-faced Awesome Foursome still under the tutelage of Drew Ginn is going to be a cracker as well. So there's going to be great things to watch, and I think the Australians will succeed beyond expectations as it is on paper.
Mike Drew's chasing a fairly historic gold medal trail, isn't he? He could be one of the faces from the Games. Who do you think will walk out the other end as being probably the most sought after when your phone starts to ring for interviews?
Oh, I think Matt summed it up with Magnussen and Pearson. I think Lauren Mitchell in gymnastics, we'd really loved to see her win, because that is a sport where we think we're going to get better as we go further. Drew will be the most successful Australian rower in history if he wins another gold medal. That would be, for me, an unbelievable story, because throughout the Beijing Games, he was crippled. I'm sure you've seen the story on the ABC last week, but there were meetings every night in my office because he couldn't even ride the bus to get to the venue, let alone row. And we had a standby rower in case we had to pull him out of the boat. He couldn't even get into the boat. So for him to even be at another Games, let alone be the favourite to win another gold medal, is an amazing story. And he would, well, he'd be a lay-down misère to carry the flag in the closing if he wins.
Yeah, we don't want him to hurt his back in the opening. Jana, in terms of the pressure that's on Sally Pearson and the other gold medal favourites, how much pressure is on them?
Extraordinary amounts, but I'm sure a lot of it comes from inside. You know, these are competitive athletes that have been at the top of their game for a long time, and you know, it's a real honour to compete for your country. And the Olympics is the pinnacle of any athlete's career, obviously in amateur sport for Olympic sports. So I think they've just got to grasp it with everything they've got. And you know, I'm starting to realise how short your sporting career can be, and I'm sure they're realising what an opportunity they've got. And particularly with Sally, obviously I know Sally fairly well, and she is one of the hungriest, most dedicated athletes I've ever met. So I think if she's got even the smallest opportunity, if she's got a sniff of winning that gold medal, it'll be hers.
Mike, just important to explain to people the measures that are put in place from the Australian Olympic Committee's point of view in terms of athlete liaison officers, also psychology support to help the athletes get through what is a fairly pressured situation, and arguably there is nothing like the Olympic Games for an athlete in their career. No,
we have 4 athlete liaison officers in London this time. Steve Waugh, John Eales, Lane Beachley and Kieran Perkins. And what we found after the Sydney 2000 Games was the athletes themselves preferred to work with athlete liaison officers rather than psychologists. And just watching John Eales in Athens in 2004, as you all know, the hockey team, the men's hockey, were always the bridesmaid. They must have been asked 1,000,000 times, when are you ever going to win the gold medal? Eales worked really closely with them in Athens, and ask anyone on that team and they'll say that John Eales got them across the line. So yeah, those 4 people will work closely with athletes and teams in London, and they do a fantastic job.
Matt, Steve Hooker, he's got the yips. Has he got the yips, or is he trying to psych out his opposition?
No, I think he's got the yips. I don't think that's much of a secret. Look, Steve's... I mentioned with Sally, he's an ultimate professional. He's a technician. He can rely on that technique, as he has done, winning Olympic, World, Indoor, Commonwealth championships. The issue for Steve right now has been what to attain beyond all of those things. And I think he was focused on the world record for a period of time. He got injured. He was swapping his poles. He went from the carbon poles to the fiberglass poles that Sergej Bubka was using to break the world record. He thought that would be the difference. He's come back off that now again, and he's had to restart and rebuild. And I think the issue now for Steve is consistency. He's just got to get a couple of good competitions behind him. It may only be one. It may only be two. He may need 5. It might not be enough time for him. But get in amongst the conditions outside. He's jumped really well at his training facility in Perth, indoors. He's had a couple of bad meetings in Europe and China where the weather hasn't been perfect for him, and it just hasn't given him the chance to build a bit of that consistency. But hopefully, a couple more competitions in Europe heading into London, he's got the ability to do it. And look, 590 will win a gold medal. It's not going to be a 6.605 or 6.10 sort of a jump that'll win the gold. It's very high pressured, and he's more than capable of doing that. And he's done it before.
Yeah, and a physical versus mental. It's hard, isn't it, to overcome the mental side of things?
Well, when it comes down to the Olympic final, it's all about mental. So realistically, I was thinking about that when you asked me the question before. I didn't probably answer it correctly, because the Olympic Games and any elite sport is where the heroes get made because of the attitude they have leading into the race and the way they control themselves in a call room. And interestingly, with Matt talking about Steve in 2000, most people probably don't know this, but obviously Steve had an amazing Commonwealth Games in 2006, came out and won, looked amazing. So everybody obviously thought that in 2007 he'd be alongside me winning the world champs, and he bombed out and didn't even clear a height in the final. So he then comes out to smash the Olympics the following year. So a lot of it is about mental, and at least we know with Steve he's certainly got the ability to come from behind. I mean, in the Olympics, was it the Olympics or the Commonwealth where he was really injured? Was it 2010? I think it was a Commonwealth, wasn't it? Yeah. He was so injured he could, like Drew, could barely get up to the event, and he still came out and won. So mental strength, I think, pretty much makes up the last 3%, the icing on the cake, really, and you can't be without it if you're prepared to, or you have any aspirations of winning an Olympics.
I'm going to switch pace. One of the things that I guess has been taking a lot of attention, Mike Tancred, is social media and the use of social media by athletes. You knew this was coming. How are you going to control it? I mean, obviously they've signed a contract with the Australian Olympic Committee for 2 of your members, of your potentially 413, is that 413 athletes?
Around that figure, yes.
2 of your athletes you don't have to worry about because they won't be using social media. But how will you control the rest of them?
Social media is welcomed by the AOC, where there's no restriction on any of our team members using social media. The IOC loves social media. They're trying to get attached to the younger audience because they're losing the younger audience on television. They know that the younger audience is on social media, so there's no restriction from the IOC. What we say is use it, but use it responsibly. You've known that the AOC, since before Beijing, have set some really high behavioural standards. John Coates has led the way there. We would say that use it responsibly. We would frown upon anything like trash talk. It's not the Australian way to criticise your teammates on social media. It's certainly not the Australian way to criticise competitors from other countries. We would not tolerate that. So we will monitor social media throughout the Games, and the Chef de Mission, Nick Green, will deal with any breaches that occur.
You say you encourage it. I guess you encourage it when it works in your favour. But in future games, would you consider banning it?
No, not at all. It's, as I said in a speech a few months ago, the internet is like a black stallion that has bolted and it is racing across the paddock, and it's out of control. We didn't have any social media when we were in Beijing. It's exploded in the last 4 years, and it's certainly not going to go away. So you have to live with it.
Can I ask a question of Mike? Under the athlete agreement, you have certain commitments to the team sponsorship, and then you also neglected to use other personal sponsors as well. How are you going to go with interacting on social media with some of the athletes' personal sponsors?
There's a blackout period from July 16 to the 15th of August, where there's no advertising allowed, but we are going to allow athletes to blog on media sites. We're going to allow athletes to blog for their sponsors. It's just a situation where you can't put up a tweet saying, you know, Mike Tankred brought to you by Coca-Cola. That's a bit blatant, but there are certain guidelines, and we know that the sponsors have a role to play, and it'll go that way. There will be breaches. Young athletes will make mistakes.
But you have that takedown clause in the contract as well, don't you?
We do, yeah.
Yeah.
We do.
What if ASICS went on Twitter and said, right, we've got John Stephenson in the Athletes Village. He's going to be answering questions, and the best question wins a pair of ASICS spikes or something like that. I don't know. I'm just
we're an Adidas team.
Hashtag just saying.
We're an Adidas team, so that's obviously an ambush marketing issue, which I'll leave to the IOC. Look, I'm not going to allow myself to get swamped over in London by social media, because I wouldn't sleep and I'd get nothing else. I'd get nothing else done. So I'm going to go with the flow, but you know, the message has been clear to all members of the shadow team the last 2 years. I've gone around the country advising them on the dangers. My favourite phrase is, don't put anything up there that you wouldn't share with your mother or your grandmother. And I think that applies, because there's no privacy on social media. And if they put something up there, the media are also there reading their tweets, their Facebook pages, and they're quite welcome to do that. And the athletes know that if they do put those tweets or those Facebook posts out there, that they will get picked up and they will be quoted in the media.
Are you happy with Steph's tweeted photo in the bikini today?
I thought it was awesome. Seriously.
I'm sure her mother and grandmother are also proud of.
How's that any different to the relay team in the paper today?
Exactly. There was a bit of eye candy there for the women on the front of the Telegraph. I'm sure it was on the front of the Herald Sun.
Yes, it was.
Page 3. Oh, you're slipping.
I must have had the early edition. It was on the front page of mine. Yeah. Jana, are you on Twitter?
Just started, yeah.
Okay. How do you reckon you would have gone in 2004 with everything that was going on in Athens if Twitter had been around?
I probably have no idea, to be honest.
Distraction for athletes?
Yeah, but it can also be a venting system. So, you know, it is a way to keep, you know, I guess one thing with Twitter is, yes, you do get people on there that sort of maybe give you a comment you're not particularly interested or you don't want to hear. It's not necessarily very nice, but it's also an opportunity for fans to connect with their stars and their athletes, people they love. And, you know, sometimes when you're not feeling so good, you might get 1,000 messages of someone saying, good luck, you know, hope you do really well. And I think in some ways that's the opposite side of it. That I really appreciate. You know, I might be having a down day at training and I'll tweet something like, you know, foot was sore or whatever, and you get 15, 20 people writing back saying, we're behind you, we love you, then that's actually something that I find is actually the positive side of social media.
Nicole, the thing with social media is that, you know, trash talk is frowned upon for a reason, because not only if you get involved in a trash talk situation on Facebook or on Twitter, you're going to be distracted. But it also has the possibility to impact on your section, on your team. Say you're a hockey team or a swimming team, it impacts on your fellow competitors, but it also can impact on the whole 400 members of the Australian Olympic team, and that's where the Olympics is very different. It's not just a swimming team at a World Cup or a World Championship. You've got to think of the track and field guys that are still competing in the second week, the rowers. There are lots of people who've trained for 4 years to go to the Olympic Games, or a lifetime to go to one Olympic Games, and they really can't afford to just have a couple of rat bags on social media sort of distract them from the job that they're there to do. That's what it's all about.
I think the other issue for the athletes is going to be in a camp environment where some athletes are on Twitter and some aren't, and some are introduced to Twitter for the first time, either in the build-up to the games or someone's encouraging them to use it, whether it's a manager back here or a sponsor, and they don't fully understand it at the beginning. And anyone that's been on Twitter, it absorbs you at the beginning and it becomes almost difficult to manage at first, and then you start to integrate it into your life and how to best utilise it and best use it for you, and what to check on, who to follow and what to post. And I think the difficulty is the athletes that are getting on it now because they want to leverage it or they want to get the most out of it, or they feel like they're being left behind and they don't know how to use it, or they don't fully understand how to best manage it.
Can I interrupt there? My biggest thing with is, yes, Twitter's great, but if the athletes are that involved in it leading into an Olympic Games, well, then they don't deserve to win a medal anyway. They're there to do a job. Just like we don't eat certain foods during the year, we don't take certain drugs because it's our responsibility. We're elite athletes, we're representing our country, and it's our job to control our time and time manage where we are. So if some athlete gets distracted by Twitter, then I'm sorry, they shouldn't have been on the team in the first place. And I know that's a really hard stand to take, but the bottom line is that you're there to do a job. So suck it up and get the job done and come home and play on Twitter as much as you want. But that's just my opinion.
Well, Mike,
Sorry.
it brings me beautifully to athletes' behaviour. And
True. Sorry.
Yep.
No.
It just really winds me up because you're there to do a job and
that-
get an opportunity and you wasted it then.
Fired her up now.
Yeah, I'm angry.
Look, we have very strict rules.
You've been very busy lately,
Sorry,
haven't
Yeah.
you?
I'm just tweeting what you just said.
Don't forget the
Suck it
hashtag.
John Coates and the ASC board have put in even tougher rules this time around in London. Sexual discrimination is frowned upon. Racial discrimination is frowned upon. Bullying on social media will not be tolerated, and those breaches will be dealt with because that is not what the Australian Olympic team is all about. So athletes are on notice. Do not vilify anyone on social media because you'll have Nick Green knocking on your door.
Are you surprised at the public reaction to your sanctions on the two swimmers? I mean, it really was divisive right through the country, but a lot of people were saying that they were harshly treated. Yet if we see other codes, sporting codes, not punishing athletes for bad behaviour, people are in an upcry about that, saying that, you know, they're not being punished. So were you surprised by the level of reaction?
I think we were in a situation where you were damned if you did and damned if you didn't as far as Kendrick Monk and Nick Darcy went. They had some indiscretions. They'd been put on notice by Nick Green as the chef de mission that certain standard behaviour had to be maintained right from that period right through to London. They breached the team agreement. So the AOC either had to show that it had some courage and make a decision and punish those two athletes. So when I say damned if you do and damned if you don't, if we'd have waited past the Saturday, I think the media would have said weak, mealy-mouthed AOC, made a lot of threats but did nothing. So instead, we went on the front foot and we took a decision because we thought that, for the reasons I explained earlier, you can't have two athletes or a group of athletes going to the London Olympics and they're going to distract the other 400 odd, because the 400 need a fair go. They've worked really hard. They've sweated tears and blood to get there, and you just can't run the risk of someone going on social media and impacting on the whole team. And that was what the decision was. It was a tough decision, but they'd been warned previously to behave themselves, and they breached that warning that Nick Green gave them. They had form.
I'm going to open it up to questions from the audience. I know Kate has a microphone there. There's two microphones in the room. So, Tony Jones, why doesn't that surprise me that your finger is up first? You should be a sprinter. That was very fast.
Mike, Tony Jones, Channel 9. You won't have to pay to watch the Olympics. I just wanted to...
That's all right. I went to the ball the other night and Eddie got 48 plugs in for Foxtel. It's okay. Way you go, Tony.
Last Olympics it was 48 plugs for Channel 9. Anyway, I just want to ask you, you did make mention there will be breaches.
Yes.
There always is, TJ.
Yeah, in the heat of battle, some of our young athletes who have finished competition, who go to barrack for the basketball girls or the water polo girls, in all the excitement, they're going to tweet the wrong thing, they're going to say the wrong thing. I don't think that is a massive issue for us. As I said, we'd get nothing done if I worried about every small breach. But if someone is going to vilify someone on social media, if someone is going to bully someone, or sexual discrimination occurs, that is not going to be tolerated. That's our major concern, because that is not what the Australian Olympic Committee is about. We've set the bar, other sports have followed, and John Coates is adamant that that sort of behaviour will not happen in London.
And just one more for me on that. What can the offences bring? What are the penalties? What do they range from?
In the team agreement that every athlete, coach and official has to sign, The AOC will not be responsible for anything defamatory that anyone puts up on the internet or on digital media in any way. We will not be joined in any defamation case if an athlete says the wrong thing or does the wrong thing on social media. There will be a takedown clause. I hope we don't get to that point. And as I said, there would also be, in a case of a serious breach, you would have to front up and speak to Nick Green as the chef de mission.
So you say no?
There is a possibility for a serious breach, yes.
So we have one at the front here. If we can get the microphone, was it table 9 that has a question? Yeah. If we can get that microphone from TJ moved across to 9, that would be great. And we have a question at the front as well.
Nicole, Mike Smith from the Press Club. I've watched coverage of the Olympics in a number of countries, and it's always parochial. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's what local audiences want. But I was wondering if I could ask the panel if they were a sports fan from Mars and wanted to watch the 3 events that produced the best that Earth could offer, who are the elite of the elite, the creme de la creme at this Olympics that you'd want to watch?
Before they answer, can I just tell you I did a 3-day conference for the IOC. I'm calling for Olympic Broadcast Services, who is putting, for the first time, commentary onto the world feed. And we spent 3 days talking about how to make it unbiased, to the point that, you know, it is... I'm glad that we're allowed to call it a female 100 metres freestyle. You know, so there are some commentary services out there that will be exceptionally unbiased. But
No, I'm not talking about bias, I'm talking about parochialism.
Yes,
If you're in America, it's very hard to find out what's happening to an Australian athlete.
absolutely.
If you're in Australia, it's very hard to find out what's happening to an American athlete or a South American athlete.
So 3 best Earth athletes.
You know the main one. Usain.
I reckon Jana Pittman in rowing. That'd
Yeah,
be fantastic to see.
Usain
I
Bolt.
think the battle of the Jamaicans in the
Yeah.
100 for sure.
Definitely.
Johan Blake, Safa Powell and Usain. I think Vicky Pendleton and Anna Mears on the track is going to be a cracker as well. And the 2 Aussie boys in the 100 free,
Yep, 2
James
Jameses.
Roberts and James Magnuson. And it's a little bit biased actually. It's a bit Aussie, but I think they're probably my 3 picks.
Jana?
I'd probably be pretty similar.
Mike?
I'll be greedy from an AOC point of view.
You're going to throw Drew in there, aren't you?
Oh yeah, Drew, definitely. But also the 4x100 metres men's freestyle, because that's night 1. And to win that gold medal will give the whole team a great lift. And from a success point of view, that's the event that we'd really love to win, because everyone just goes through the roof. And that puts us on the right path to where we want to be come the closing ceremony day. And we have 16, 17 gold medals and probably 45, 48 medals in total. So 4x100 freestyle for me, that'll be the one I'll be cheering for.
Table number 9.
Cliff Beale, Melbourne Press Club. How important is government funding? Now, I'm thinking going back a number of years when our athletes went across to Olympic Games without any help at all, got gold medals. And I'm thinking also of the countries that really can't afford to fund us. But for Australia's point of view, how really important is government funding? And I might add, I'm a taxpayer and quite happy about it, but just how important is it?
I'll let the athletes answer first.
It's a tough one, actually. Look, I think to a certain extent, funding is an absolute. You need it. I don't think it's a coincidence that we had our most successful games in Sydney in terms of on the medal tally, because the amount of funding there was greater than any other Olympics before it. And the fact that that funding has been decreased slightly as we sort of move forward each Olympiad. And inevitably the results are getting less and less. I think this will be a testing Olympic Games for Great Britain, because I don't necessarily think that they're going to be as successful as they think they are based on the funding and development that they've had.
Jana? It's an enabler, isn't it, funding, in terms of being able to be a professional athlete?
That's spot on. So, I mean, nothing can replace talent. If a country's got talent and they've got resources, then obviously going to produce the goods. I mean, I think they looked at this year in the marathon, I think Kenyan has the top 23 ranked athletes going into the championships, and obviously they can't take all of them to the Olympics, and they don't have anywhere near as much funding as we would have even for marathon. But the simple fact is, particularly for older athletes, funding basically provides you with all your medical, all your travel and all your expenses and things like that, and that's irreplaceable. But we are very lucky. We are in a lucky country that has fantastic funding compared to some countries, as you said. But when I was talking about funding with Britain, I think what I was referring to is more that funding does help get medals, and the more medals you get increases the atmosphere in Olympics for that home country.
Mike, you have a fully funded team now. The VOC fundraising dinner was quite successful on Saturday night, so there is an element of government funding but also your own funding as well. Yes,
the AOC doesn't take government money. The government taxpayers' money that you mentioned goes direct to the sports. The AOC's $30 million campaign, $15 million to prepare this team to go to London, and then $15 million to actually take the team to London, comes from sponsors. So we don't take the government money. We're very happy with the level of funding that the Gillard government has provided us. We've been outfunded by the UK. They've spent a fortune, but we're not whinging. We think that the green and gold has kicked in a few extra million lately, but you know, most athletes that I meet live on the smell of an oily rag, and the little bit of funding they get just puts petrol in the car and some bread on the table at night, and they put careers on hold, relationships on hold. They work in Woolworths packing shelves. They do a fantastic job, and they're doing it for the love of it, to wear the tracksuit, and I think they deserve every dollar they get in funding. I really do. They're fantastic people, and they do our country proud.
Thank you. We have a question at the back of the room.
Rebecca Devlin from the Adelaide Advertiser. My question's about Grant Hackett, and will his public image be rehabilitated, and are you surprised that Channel 9 has not dropped him?
Is that to me?
To all three.
Mike, I think there's a confusion, given that Grant is an Olympic champion, that, you know, in some way, shape or form, the AOC has some role to play into whether or not he should or should not go to the Olympic Games with Network 10, Network 9,
Yes.
9 Network, sorry. You know, can you just explain that side of things as well?
Oh yeah, I had a text this morning, and someone's taking up a petition to stop Grant from going to London, and they're sending all the abusive emails to me. I'm also getting hate mail and death threats over Nick Darcy. But look, Grant is not a member of the Australian Olympic team in London. He's a Channel 9 commentator, and when I get back this afternoon, I'll have to send the petitioners a note to say, look, your emails should go to Channel 9. They shouldn't go to me. I know Nick Green last week came out in support of Grant Hackett because they're obviously friends and they've been teammates. That's Nick's prerogative. But from where John Coates sits, we were asked the same question by the Herald Sun the other day. We feel that it's a personal matter between Grant and his wife, and we would prefer just to leave it at that. But he's not a member of our team. He's a 9 commentator in London.
If the question is, can he rehabilitate his career from here on, based on indiscretions off the sporting arena or outside of his professional career, the answer is yes. I mean, we've seen it many times with other athletes, men and women.
We have a question at the front. Rob.
Rob Waters from the 10 Network. We haven't got the Olympics, but we've got being Lara Bingle.
And she wears bathers quite often.
Sorry, I've missed that, Rob.
So did I. What's a pass mark for gold medals? A simple one to you all. How many golds should we win?
Oh, you love this question, don't you? How many gold medals are we going to win?
Well, the last benchmark was not good for us. It had us in 8th position overall, but we actually had 15 gold, which put us right up with Great Britain and Germany. So we were like equal 4th with those two. So, you know, if I'd be doing handstands if we got to 15, 16, 17 gold. That'd be absolutely fantastic. And I think Matt knocked it on the head earlier when we think there's some gold medals in certainly women's water polo, women's basketball, BMX. There's gold medals there that we've got our fingers crossed that we think we can do quite well.
Team Great Britain finished 4th on the medal tally by a slight margin ahead of Germany and Australia in 6th. And Sebastian Coe was quoted in an article just recently saying that Germany will fight back, but it's the Australians I'm most worried about because they'll come back harder and faster. It's in their DNA, and I think that's absolutely true. I think any time that we'll see an Australian up against a British athlete, I just have a feeling that our comfort with the environment in London, the fact that the Australian athletes have spent, whether it's in transit or in competition in London, we're comfortable there. I mean, if you chose a country outside of Australia to host an Olympic Games that Australian athletes are comfortable with, London and the UK would be one of the top picks. So I have, it's a feeling, and you can look at the stats as much as you want. I mean, there have been analysts that look at it based on pure data, population, geographic positioning to the host nation, whatever it is. I think Australia is going to succeed expectations based on their medal placing.
Well said.
Hi, Patrick O'Byrne from Haystack and the Press Club. Question perhaps for Mike on media consumption habits in the fortnight where we've been focusing on the shift and disruptive technology. How do you anticipate people to consume the Olympics this year through other forms? We've heard from the rights holder and the free-to-air option, but what about new forms of media being tablet and smartphone consumption? And perhaps some advice on how we best organise ourselves as fans to watch it when we're busy.
I feel sorry for my friends in the media. I'm sort of glad I'm not there anymore. I think you're in what I would call a digital desperation right at the moment. And I could probably best explain that by saying that in the old days, Neil, it was a competition between, say, the Herald Sun and The Age as to who had the best story when the paper hit the lawn at 6 a.m. in the morning. Well, now these are the internet games. So the deadline for Tony or for The Age is really not that relevant anymore because the internet will take control at these games. And without being critical, there is desperation there because it's like a camel drinking the internet. You just got to keep going. So 1 minute someone will put up a story and then the opposition will think, well, how the bloody hell am I going to top that? So then they try something else. And I remember from my Sky days in the UK, when I went to work for Mr. Murdoch, we didn't have any vision in those days. And we used to use the same vision over and over again. And I'd come home at 3 o'clock in the morning, I'd say, I saw that story at 8 o'clock this morning, I want to change. And that's what this is going to be all about. This is going to be moving images, the internet, refreshing all the time, getting new stories. So this is like a 24/7 operation for the media, and this is going to be intense competition. It's going to put added pressure on me and my people because there's going to be this thirst from the camel drinking. We want more information, we want more interviews. So it's going to be a fascinating games, and really I think the IOC will look at these games and then they'll step back at the end and say, well, these are probably some rules we need to put in place because this thing, this black stallion, as I call it, is really galloping at an unbelievable rate. It's the black caviar, if you like.
I want to interrupt before Matt tells us about IQ Record and the fact that you can do that if you wanted to.
I was going to take my Foxtel hat off and give you an anecdote of me watching the NFL finals at 7 o'clock after a repeat at 7 o'clock that night on ESPN when it was run at 10 a.m, when it felt like it was about 3 weeks later when I watched that because I'd seen it all unravel on Twitter and mates calling me. And it's the significance of live sport these days. You've got to go live, otherwise you'll be behind.
We are out of time. Our guests have been very gracious. I want to ask Matt just to finish in relaying something that he spoke to me about before we came into the room. if there is some doubt about how exciting these games are going to be and how well received they are going to be from people, particularly in the UK, you've just had the opportunity to run with the torch in York. Can you just share that experience with us?
It was an amazing experience. I felt privileged and humbled to carry the torch. But as you said, the momentum, the pageantry, the celebration, it's building. The Jubilee celebrations really kicked off what is probably the most proud I think I've seen the British people. I lived there for 6 years, and I've seen them come and go through successful and unsuccessful sporting endeavours. But really, they're so pumped up by this, and even the Euro the other day, I don't think is going to really knock them about in the lead into these games. About a year ago, Sam Lane and I had a conversation over in London. She went down to an East End train station and spoke to a number of locals down there, and they didn't know which athletes were running. They couldn't really name a British athlete. The face of the games, it's changed now. They understand what's coming. They know Jessica Ennis in the heptathlon on the track. They know Philip Sadowa grew up in the area and he's going to go for gold. Chris Hoy wants another bag full of gold medals. It's building. The momentum from a supporter group across the UK is growing. And don't forget too, London's a melting pot of cultures. So it's really going to be a mixed bag of supporters in the main stadium and the other venues, because you'll see people from around the world cheering on athletes from their home country.
Well said. Would you please join me in thanking our guests today? And I will pass back to Peter Bartlett as well, just to finish off the function. Thank you very much, and I hope you enjoy the Olympic experience as well. Thank you.
Well, I think just in closing, we are all hoping for the second best Olympic Games ever. I think that Matt said that the athletes are pumped. I think we're all pumped to be watching on television or social media or whatever. I think it's going to be a great few days, and I think we're all looking forward to it. Mike focused a couple of times speaking on the training that the athletes do. I think we'll be looking at some of these events on television and to some degree forget about those athletes and how they got there. If you look, I think we all got up this morning and it was 2 degrees and we were saying how cold it was. We probably didn't focus on potentially the swimmers, for example, who were out of bed at 4:30 this morning and in the pool at 5 a.m. and are probably doing 11 sessions a week, and all the other Australian sports people and the sports people around the world are doing the same. So we really need to admire these sports people and these wonderful sports people that we've seen today. Could you please join with me in thanking Nicole, Jana, Mike and Matt?